We've been very fortunate to have wonderful keynote speakers, and I am so honored and privileged and thrilled to have Jane Velez-Mitchell as the one to open this year's summit. First of all, she's an original. She is... Jane speaks her mind. She wears her heart on her sleeve, and when people watch her, they feel all along with her. Over the years, she has done specials on all animals, from research animals to all kinds of subjects of abuse and neglect, but she's also done quite a bit on horses, wild horses, domestic horses. She has run the gamut, and she informs. She has millions of viewers. You probably would have millions of visitors. She has millions of viewers, and she educates, and that's what we all love about her. She's a best-selling author. I don't really think I need to say much more about her. Jane Velez-Mitchell.
Wow! First of all, I want to thank all of you. You have restored my faith in humanity. We're not that bad, us humans, looking around this room. Wow. Well, first of all, I want to thank Vickery Eckhoff for introducing me to this wonderful gang and just fabulous people. And we were sitting around Susan's kitchen last night having some fabulous vegan lasagna. And I was meeting Paula Bacon, and I was meeting John Holland, and I was meeting all these legends. So this room is packed with legends, people who are changing the world. And I just say, God bless you. Thank you for being there. Thank you for caring. We had the privilege of staying at Donna Naidoo's house, and thank you for opening up your doors to me and my girlfriend and your beautiful home. And John Holland, thank you for caring. Thank you for devoting your life to this cause. Every single person in this room is a hero. And it reminds me that never underestimate the capacity of a small but determined group of people to change the world. Are we going to change the world for horses? Yes! Are we doing it right now? Yes. And you heard how this summit, which was created by Susan Wagner, and I throw in her fabulous sister, Karen, and she was just a good-hearted person sitting around in Queens, New York, saying, I just can't sleep with what we're doing to these animals. And she created this summit, and the summit resulted in you being inspired, and you've accomplished, Victoria McCullough, all this incredible strides that you've made, and so we all are together in this web of compassion and brainstorming. So who knows what's going to come out of this summit? We've already had incredible accomplishments from a previous summit. Who knows what's going to come out of this summit? I can tell you already, I feel that somebody upstairs brought me here because one of the stories I've been working on is this plan to build a monkey breeding facility to capture wild monkeys from Mauritius and drag them into a facility in Florida and breed them for very painful experimentation. And literally, since I found out about this, and you can verify with my partner, I wake up in the middle of the night, tossing and turning. What am I going to do about this? This is horrific. Nobody in Florida government seems to care. Everybody is giving me the runaround, the governor, the EPA, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the USDA, the EPA. Nobody cares. The commissioners. And so I just happened to be talking to Victoria, and she had some incredible ideas about how to broach that subject. And what's really horrifying in terms of where we are societally today is that there was a plan to build a similar monkey breeding facility in Puerto Rico, which was shut down because of environmental concerns. The battle went all the way up to the Puerto Rican Supreme Court, and the Puerto Rican Supreme Court said, no, we don't want this on our island. And yet it's easier to open that in Florida? That's a very, very scary commentary on the lack of environmental protections right now in the United States, as environmental laws and often humane considerations are gutted. So, right there, we've accomplished something today. All right. I did make a few notes because I knew I was dealing with some experts, and I better have my facts right. But I always like to start with a quote that's from Gandhi: "The greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by how it treats its animals." And by that measure, we have a really long way to go. Of course, when people think of animals, they often think of their dogs and cats, but the vast majority of animals in this country are not dogs and cats. 9 billion farm animals are raised and killed for food every year in horrific factory farm conditions. And that is an abomination, the institutionalized cruelty that occurs, and I've done a lot of stories on that with organizations like Mercy for Animals, Humane Society of the United States, PETA, and various other organizations. And literally every single time they go undercover in a factory farm, they find extraordinary mind-boggling cruelty. So we've talked already about the experimentation issues. We've talked about the factory farming issues. What about the USDA's wildlife services? What are we going to do about that? Our tax dollars being pumped into a needless, secret organization that basically goes out and kills wildlife indiscriminately. And as the Sacramento Bee put it, Wildlife Services is a federal agency that operates in secrecy, using brutal traps, poison, and aerial gunning to kill thousands of animals, with accidental victims that include federally protected species, family pets, and injured people. Now, we talk about a budget crisis. We've got to reduce the deficit. We've got to cut back. So let's cut the arts program. But, oh, God forbid, we cut Wildlife Services that is running around killing all these animals that often we also spend tax dollars trying to protect. So what kind of madness is that? And there are stories like this all over the country involving all sorts of species, but obviously we're here to talk about horses today. And I think of all the stories that I've done in the 6 years I've been at HLN, and prior to that with Celebrity Justice and other organizations that, news organizations that I've worked for, I probably covered the story of the wild horses more than any other story. And some of my heroes, Ginger Catherines, Debbie Coffey, are in the room today, and many others. And if I leave you out, it's only because I have very bad eyesight. Our government's supposed to be of the people, by the people, and for the people. Americans have made it clear, taxpayers, citizens, that we love our horses. The U.S. government should be listening to that and doing everything it can to protect our wild horses. But obviously that is not the case. We're also supposed to be a nation of laws. And that's why legislation is supposed to mean something. And so our legislators passed the Wild Free Roaming Horses and Burros Act of 1971. On the surface, it is very clear. It says, protect our wild horses. Congress finds and declares that free-roaming horses and burros are living symbols of the historic and pioneer spirit of the West, that they contribute to the diversity of life forms within the nation and enrich the lives of the American people, and that these horses and burros are fast disappearing from the American scene. It is the policy of Congress that wild free-roaming horses and burros shall be protected from capture, branding, harassment, or death. And to accomplish this, they are to be considered in the area where they are presently found as an integral part of the natural system of public lands. Pretty clear, right? It sounds wonderful. Except there's a little problem with our government, and that is the fine print. And each and every one of these laws and acts are filled with so much fine print, so much mumbo-jumbo, that the cynical bureaucrats can twist it to mean whatever they want it to mean at any given time. And that's exactly what the Interior Department and the BLM and at times the Forest Service has done. George Orwell exposed that classic trick with his novel 1984. And he talked about a fictional totalitarian government that created a new language called newspeak. But it's come to be commonly known as doublespeak. And that's what we get from the government today. We get doublespeak. And essentially, what it is you say the exact opposite of what you mean. Okay, so when you say you're going to help the animals, you hurt the animals. we're bombarded with these wonderful platitudes about how much our government cares about the wild horses. These platitudes are crafted by PR hacks, while the actual government workers and officials in power go ahead and they promote and carry out policies that terrorize the wild horses. So you have mothers ripped from their babies, and I've seen it with my own eyes on video. We've all seen the video of these low-flying government helicopters chasing these horses. Sometimes their hooves splinter as they run in terror, separated from their foals. But let me quote the BLM. Quote, "The Department of the Interior and the BLM care deeply about the well-being of wild horses and burros, both on and off the range. It has been and remains the policy of the BLM not to sell or send wild horses or burros to slaughter," end quote. Doublespeak! When a Native American tribe from Nevada wanted to sell 149 Mustangs, auctioning them off for likely slaughter, well, you'd think they care about the wild horses, so the BLM would take the horses' side, right? No. Even though horse lovers went to court and argued that these were unbranded horses, federally protected wild horses, a Justice Department lawyer representing the BLM argued there is no basis to prevent the sale of the horses. They didn't even have a passive role in not helping the horses. They actively went out to help the sale, to facilitate the sale of these horses. So is the BLM on the wild horses' side? I say no. Now, thank God, according to reports and people I talked to, those 149 Mustangs were saved thanks to extraordinary superhuman efforts of horse lovers, probably some of the people in this room. But why should it take superhuman efforts on the part of American taxpayers to do the right thing when the government should be doing the right thing by these horses? Everything about these roundups is cynical and misleading. They call them gathers. I hate that phrase. Oh, come here, honey, we're going to gather you up. No. We've all seen the video. The use of the Judas horse and all the other just insidious strategies they use. And, there's just ways of twisting definitions. Again, it's part of the whole doublespeak syndrome. So they can describe horses as XX horses, all right, who must be removed in order to maintain a thriving ecological balance and multiple use relationships in that area. Okay, again, another little phrase that gives the BLM, the Interior Department, the Forest Service carte blanche to do whatever they want. And let's get to the point now. Why? Why is the U.S. government so interested in rounding up these wild horses? I've always said, whenever you see animal cruelty, follow the money. Follow the money every single time. Obviously, all of us not only do not make money off of our passion to help animals, but I think we could all say it's been a giant money pit in all of our lives. So who does the government really answer to? And I think this is one of the problems with the spiritual bankruptcy of our government. In almost every case, the BLM, and this applies to really a lot of areas of our government in general today, operates at the behest and for the benefit of private industry. And in the case of the wild horses, it's generally, and I just say generally because there are exceptions and there are other industries, but for the most part, it seems to be, from my cursory or my investigation of it, the cattle industry. Almost every time you read a story about horses being removed from public lands, there's a line that goes something like this: area ranchers and farmers had long complained that the herd grazed down pastures and damaged cattle rangeland. That's an actual quote from an actual article. Well, first of all, we have to ask, why is our government acting as the agency for industry? These are public lands. If people want more land to graze their cattle, they can buy land and graze the cattle on their private land. But the private industries have packed government bureaucracies with people from their industry to the point where actually the agencies that are supposed to run and monitor certain industries are run by the industries they're supposed to monitor. Double speak, double think. Case in point, former Interior Secretary Ken Salazar. Well, he is a rancher. He has his own cattle ranch. So is he going to speak up for the voiceless horses, or is he going to speak up for the ranching industry? The answer is clear. Now, what about Interior Secretary Sally Jewell? I actually had high hopes for her. I thought, well, okay, the former CEO of REI, the outdoor gear store, well, she previously worked in the oil industry, and in a major speech that I watched when I had asked her a bunch of questions about the horses, and she sent me back, or their office sent me back an hour and a half speech that she made where she barely mentions the horses, but she talked a lot about fracking and how she's fracked wells. And so she is a part of the fracking community. She said it right out there. And she also said, a lot of fracking is done on BLM lands, and I expect to do more of it in the future. So again, is she going to stand up for the horses, or is she going to stand up for the fracking industry? Instead of just saying, we want these damn horses off our land so we can use this land for industry, which would at least be honest, the government comes up with all sorts of flowery justifications for their decisions. Excuse number one, there are too many horses, they reproduce too quickly, and if we don't remove them, we'll be overrun by wild horses. It's amazing they don't even have a soundtrack of hooves and behind that as they say that. But let's just come back to planet Earth for a second. There's about 37,000 wild horses on public lands, on federal lands. There used to be millions of wild horses out there, and nobody was overrun. And on top of that, think about the four-legged animal that's really in the millions, cattle. So what are we going to get overrun by? The 37,000 horses or the millions of cattle that are out there? Excuse number two, they reproduce too quickly. Okay, excuse number three, the horses are starving and we're actually saving their lives. That to me is the doublespeak award of the century. Especially when they're fat and sassy as you see them racing away from the choppers, and they have babies, which is an indication that they're not starving. Excuse number four, the horses are damaging the ecosystem. But according to, well, there's so many reports, but the Mother Nature Network, quote, cattle are more damaging to fragile habitats than horses. Studies have shown wild horses roam much farther from water sources than cattle, which tend to graze within 1 mile of water sources, causing erosion, overgrazing, and contamination, end quote. So wouldn't it make more sense if you were concerned about the ecosystem to cut back on the cattle? Okay, now my favorite part. Cattle rancher Clive Bundy. Obviously, he has really stuck his foot in some manure, saying some very hideous things and revealing his mentality. As the New York Times described this man, he is really nothing more than a deadbeat who has refused to pay $1 million in grazing fees that he owes grazing his cattle for more than 20 years. And I mean, this man has an outrageous sense of entitlement. While he makes horrific comments, which I don't even want to dignify by repeating, but I think you've all heard them by now, about things that have nothing to do with the issue at hand. He says, I quote, "I don't recognize the U.S. government as even existing." That's a direct quote from him. That's one of his nicer quotes. Meanwhile, he's riding around on a horse, though, with American flag. So that doesn't quite jibe. And now, but the thing that I found most offensive is that he was holding a dead calf, what appeared to be a dead calf, the other day, and saying, "Who killed this calf? The U.S. government," as if he's some kind of animal rights activist. No, he's raising animals for slaughter for profit. He's not running an animal sanctuary. So that was another example of doublespeak. Those lands don't belong to the ranching community. They belong to us Americans. And we have passed laws as Americans because we care about other species. So we have tried to protect, for example, the desert tortoise that is being decimated by the all-terrain vehicles that are out there. These are important considerations, and let's not let anybody simply dismiss them as, oh, the considerations of effete liberals who, care about tortoises. No, we are, as a planet, as a species, we are destroying so many other species. Every couple of seconds, another species either becomes endangered or actually dies off. So we have to worry about the desert tortoise and all of nature's creatures. The ranchers are already getting a very, very sweet deal. They're getting grazing land at cost because it's subsidized by us taxpayers that is much lower than what they would pay if they were doing that on private lands. Here's the big important question to me. As the world endures an escalating environmental crisis, and we all felt it with this bitter winter, and the West is having fires, and there's mudslides, and there's storms and hurricanes that we didn't used to see in this parts of the world, we need to start asking ourselves, is cattle ranching the best use of our public resources? And the answer is no. One of the reasons I'm a vegan, and that means I'm not wearing any leather, and I don't eat meat, and I don't drink milk. Thank you. Well, meat production is one of the biggest causes of climate change. And there are numerous studies that affirm that. The destruction of the rainforest and other forests to create grazing land, the methane that the animals produce, the huge amount of energy, grain, and water that goes into creating an animal for slaughter. If you took that grain and that water and redirected it, we could end world hunger today around the world. You could feed an entire village with the amount of grain and energy that it takes to create one cow. So I say I'm a vegan because I care about people. We really have to start thinking about what our choices as a society are. And the wild horses and the battle between the ranchers and the wild horses is really ground zero for trying to figure out which direction our country is going to go. And so my message to you is, don't let up. Be relentless. Let's expand our numbers. Let's have the kind of breakthroughs that Victoria achieved and that you've achieved. Paula Bacon with the closing of the slaughterhouse. We've got to have more of those breakthroughs. We've got to take this group and expand it 1,000-fold by next year. We've got to really hit critical mass because the survival of our species depends on it along with the horses. I want to say a very, very few words about the carriage horses. This is another very important issue that is very dear to my heart because I live right in Midtown Manhattan. I wake up to the sound of the horses' hooves. I go to sleep to the images of these tired and really miserable horses as I walk my dogs at night. I see them going to work. I see them leaving work. And I could tell you, because I look into their eyes and I try to pet them and I apologize to them, they are miserable. They are miserable. They are terrified. They are in the midst of traffic and crazy cab drivers and screaming sirens, and they do not belong there. And people say, tradition? Well, chastity belts used to be tradition. And let me say this. There's this little thing that came along. You know, there was this little thing that came along that made that unnecessary. It's called cars. We don't need carriage horses. It's of the past. And these animals, I will testify. You can give me a polygraph. I see them and I look in their eyes every day. Ironically, because I live right in Midtown Manhattan, I probably see more horses on a daily basis than some of you people because they're right there in my face. I can't get away from it. And I I see it every day, the near misses, the near accidents. I've been in cabs going down Central Park South, and I'm screaming at the cab driver, please slow down, these horses, right there. It's absolutely inhumane, and it has to end. And the mayor, Bill de Blasio, was elected on the position of eliminating the carriage horses, and now there's a whole campaign to get him to back off. Again, do any of the people who want to end the carriage horses have a profit motive? No. The people who want to keep them have a profit motive. Follow the money. So they say, save our horses, the carriage horse industry. What is that? Doublespeak.